All right, so let's talk about navigating reality in a very basic sense, right? So we have our mind, the seat of our consciousness. Then we have our heart, the seat of our emotions, right? The seat of our desires. And then we have our intuition. And some people talk about the intuition being located in the solar plexus and others in the third eye area. And in truth, I think there's two different kinds of intuition. There's kind of an intuition which is more basic, which has to do with what you should or shouldn't do in sort of a moment to moment sense. And then there's a deeper intuition, which is connected to your third eye, which has to do with seeing, having the truth of things maybe revealed to you, even depending on exactly how you want to think about that, right? Now, the problem is in our modern world, we're so mental, and the mind wants to dominate everything, right? So the mind is the seat of consciousness. It's the thing that helps us navigate around reality, figure out what's going on. Of course, it's very important. It sort of sets the tone for how we're going to approach things, right? The problem is that the mind doesn't know what you want, right? Ultimately, you are a soul. You are a spiritual being in a body. And the mind is your mechanism. It is your computer brain, the means by which you engage with everything else in reality. But what you're really here to do is express yourself, to be incarnated in this particular body with this particular set of attributes and qualities and live a certain life, right? And the key to that is in your heart, it's in your emotion, it's in your desires, the things that you really want. Not necessarily just on a superficial level, although there's nothing wrong with having some superficial desires as well. There's nothing wrong with having favorite foods or colors or activities, right? Yeah, we can get a little too caught up in some of that stuff, and that's where you can get into sort of a hedonistic or ultra materialistic frame set. But for the most part, not a big deal, right? But when it comes to bigger things, the really important things in life, right? What do I want to do with myself? Maybe what kind of profession I have, or even a big decision like whether or not you want to date someone, or whether or not you want to take a job, or whether or not you want to move to a new city or something like that, right? These things are not really things that your mind should be deciding, okay? They're actually things that your intuition should truly be deciding based on the desires in your heart, okay? Right? So your mind helps you navigate through reality, your computer brain, you're figuring out what's happening and this and that. And again, it can do so many helpful things. It definitely can help protect you, right? You need to know that a sharp object is sharp, so don't get stabbed. You need to know that water is wet, so if I'm outside and it's raining, I might want to make sure that certain things don't get rained on. All this basic stuff, right? And obviously, it gets a lot more complicated than that in terms of all the dynamics, the physics, and the metaphysics of reality that your mind needs to understand in order to help you make good decisions, right? But in terms of the things that you really want, in terms of what you should do, right? Setting aside all these mechanical things that you're trying to figure out and understand, that's really just all in the heart, okay? Now, that being said, it is important to not always let your heart run away with everything either, okay? There is a time and a place sometimes to say no to your heart as well. Now, for the most part, we definitely want to encourage people to be pursuing what is in their heart, okay? There's just occasionally points in life where it's important to maybe hold back a little bit or just make a move at the right point. And that's what your intuition is really about. Your intuition is that silent voice, that voice without a voice, those thoughts without thoughts, those feelings without feelings. It's so hard to describe what intuition is, right? Just that little something there, that little burning fire in your solar plexus area, which just fires up a little bit and says, let's do this, let's do that, or let's not do this, let's not do that, right? So again, your brain helps you navigate through reality. Your heart is what generates your desires, the things you should pursue and whatnot. But your intuition, which is sort of really the seat of God, as it were, that's the decider. the thing that truly determines what you should or should not do in any given moment. And it's important to not let your mind try and dominate you, right? Not let your mind try and get you off track. Your mind is going to latch on to all these other things, right? Your mind just wants to think in terms of thoughts. Other people have ideas about how you should live your life, what you should do, what you should value. There's all these philosophies and ideologies and systems and ways of thinking, all these cultural habits, right? And they strongly influence us, try to get us on a certain track. And your mind is in that business, right? Your mind trucks in ideas, naturally, of course. It's what the mind is, the seat of consciousness, the place where all the ideas get together and sort of express themselves. And both their Platonic ideal and also the actual pragmatic reality of how things work, okay? And so it can easily try to dominate so much, right? Oh, maybe the heart doesn't know what it wants. But that's nonsense. This is what's really important to understand, right? The heart does know what it wants. And the heart wants things often for reasons that, well, they don't really have a reason, right? It's not really rational, okay? It's just a desire that you want to move towards, right? Your mind is the part of you that wants to rationalize everything, to explain everything, to make an excuse for everything, to justify everything. In addition to wanting to constantly collect and collect and collect more data and information and whatnot to better evaluate and make decisions. And to the extent that that can help you, you know, in a basic, pragmatic, day-to-day way, can help you not, you know, be in danger, right? Can help you sort of navigate through some basic things. That's all great. But in terms of like the really big decisions, right? What kind of life should I live? Your mind can't answer these questions. Your mind wants to. That's what I'm saying. Your mind is constantly trying to impose its will upon you. All right? Your mind is sort of like the masculine aspect, right? And the heart is more the feminine aspect. And the feminine aspect knows what you really want. Okay? And it doesn't matter whether or not that makes sense, right? Maybe you were born into a certain lifestyle or background, and it seems like you might have a certain trajectory that would fit the details of your life. Certainly I can relate to that. Being a very sort of liberal, coastal, materialist, intellectual, and a do-gooder and a progressive and a person who's greatly interested in history and politics and all of this. I certainly thought, and many of the details of my life would still suggest or dictate that I should be a college professor or something along those lines within the conventional academic sort of materialist intellectual world. And I still hope to use all of those assets. I hope to use my intellectual skills and abilities, even in terms of thinking about conventional things, to enhance what I have to say about metaphysics and spirituality and all of these other things. But for whatever reason, the heart wants what it wants, right? And so my heart and then my intuition have been telling me, oh, this is right, Alden. You just need to pursue this. And it's such a war that goes on between your mind and your heart, with your intuition kind of trying to, again, adjudicate and decide, right? Because they speak different languages. You know, your mind thinks in terms of facts and empirical information and knowledge and all of that stuff, trying to find certitude, trying to prove things, right? Whereas your heart is just like, nah, man, we just do what we want. I do what I want, right? And obviously that can take on sort of a ridiculous, kind of negative, hedonistic style as well. But you don't have to go there, okay? And that's something that I think a lot of hyper-rationalist, empirical, mentally oriented kind of people like to say. They like to criticize you for operating from your heart space because it's a lot easier to do that. Because it doesn't really make sense, right? You feel safer. Your mind feels safer when you're constructing your life, when you're making decisions based on sort of accumulating more of this factual information, trying to evaluate again the way your friends and family live, the way other people live, the way society is telling you to live. But in the end of the day, that's not going to make you happy. And you need to listen to your heart. And you need to trust your intuition above all else. And it's not something that's mental. And I'm going to talk more about this in a separate video. Okay? All sorts of people, especially when it comes to dating. I've got so much to say about that. When it comes to love, right, and relationships. Again, people are just trapped in their mind. They're not connecting with their heart. Which is extra silly there, because we're talking about the actual subject of love and dating and romance and relationships, where the heart truly reigns supreme. But spoiler for you, spoiler mind, the heart reigns supreme everywhere, okay? And you have to listen to your heart. Trust your heart and listen to your intuition. Or whatever way you want to formulate it, you understand. There are times and places, like I said, where your heart can get a little carried away. That's a perfectly valid critique. But at the same time, that often just comes down to timing, right? Sometimes the timing is not right, but ultimately the heart usually knows what it wants. And if you trust your intuition, you'll get there. You got to trust God too. Got to trust the universe to deliver, right? You got to get into alignment. Be honest with yourself. Be honest with your heart about what you want. Be honest with God about what you want. About the blueprint that you created for your life before you were born. And then after you get into alignment and am clear about your heart and your desires, things can start to open up. Or so they say. So I say. So I believe. I personally haven't exactly seen this in my life in quite the way that I would want. But at the same time, I've also spent a lot of my life letting my mind sort of dominate me. And the mind is also the arena of fear. That's where fear, aka the devil, is going to be at work. Trying to throw you off. Trying to dangle all these other possibilities in front of you, right? Oh, I could live this life. I could live that life. Maybe I should do this. Maybe I should do that. So many possibilities. That's what's beautiful about life, right? But that's all the more reason why the mind is not the place to figure these things out. Only the heart is going to be able to tell you what you really want. And I know it's a funny thing to imagine that maybe you've sort of figured that out before you incarnated. But to be honest, it doesn't even matter. We can even just set that aside. Whether or not you figured it out before you incarnated, whether or not you even believe in reincarnation or these spiritual concepts, I would still submit to you that listening to your heart and trusting your feelings and your emotions is the thing that is going to bring you the most happiness. It's going to bring you closer and closer and closer to your ideal life and to all the things that you really want. But part of that is about letting go of these older ideas about what you wanted, what other people say you should want, what you maybe wanted in the past. And that's fine. It's okay to change your mind. I think it's pretty healthy and normal. In politics, we penalize people so much for being inconsistent or crossing the aisle or this or that, but realistically speaking, being able to change your mind and adopt a new course, I mean, it's generally a good sign. It shows that you're at least capable of reevaluating how you thought about something, how you felt about something maybe, and pursuing a new course. All right. I got plenty more to say as always, but we're just going to leave it at that for now. Computer brain, really essential, the seat of consciousness, the means and ways, the ways and means by which we swim through this soupy Maya? Absolutely. It makes sense why it sort of tries to dominate things, but there's so many possibilities, endless possibilities. So you just got to trust your heart and your feelings and listen to your intuition about what you should really do. And it's not always going to go like you wanted to, right? Because intuition and feelings don't speak the language of thoughts. It's not even a language in that sense, right? It kind of cuts to the core of it. It's just feelings. And intuitions are, I don't even know. Intuition is not the same thing as emotion. It operates in a similar sense. It's not like thoughts. So in that sense, they're somewhat aligned. But how could we even describe intuitions? Kind of in a way halfway between a thought and a feeling. Like a zzz, that you should or shouldn't do something. Or that you should or shouldn't pursue something. Or that something is or is not valid or true, maybe. We all feel that when we get that goosebumps feeling, right? That electrical zzz, like, oh, something magical. Something intuitive, maybe something true happening. It's all a mystery. Let it come. Let it be. I love you so very much. God loves you so very much. Thank you for joining me. I'll be back again soon. Many blessings.